Now, I know we all want to go to space, but sometimes we may need to hold back. 2001: A Space Odyssey talks about why. Let's go. All right, so I am stoked. I'm going to have to hold myself back because this is like one of my favorite series of all time. You might see why people are going to groan and go, "Oh God, that movie." No, we're talking about the book here. Maybe talk about the movie. We'll see. All right, guys. So welcome back. But I had to get that out right there. Welcome back to Books, Banter, and Beyond. My name is Rob. This is my mom, Karen. We are the hosts on another literary journey here. And as mentioned today, we're going to go over the 2001 series, which is, funny enough, 4 books, one of which was never actually published. And we'll talk about that in a second. I don't know why it just happened that way. All right, so this actually kind of relevant here. We all want to go to space. Well, not all of us, but there's a lot of famous, not so, good people ever that want to go up into space, and that's great. No, I think it is important as a people to learn about your surroundings, and we have talked about before about with the shape of the world. It is good to have a backup just in case. So it is important to kind of see what else is out there. We've been to Mars. We've been to the moon. We're not going to live on the moon, obviously. We know about the sun. And of course, we have our entire solar system, right? But back in the day, a man by Arthur C. Clarke, one of my favorite sci-fi authors ever, wrote a series called 2001. And the first that always makes me laugh here before we get to our question is these science fiction guys, bless their hearts, they thought we were going to be so far ahead of what we're doing now. Like, and I saw a meme earlier today where it was like, in the year 2003, we're going to be in portable rocket ships flying around. And I'm just like, oh, love you guys. Thank you so much for your effort. We're nowhere even close to that whatsoever, but I appreciate the sentiment of you guys, right? And that's what these books actually cover. These books are supposed to be what happens in the year 2001, 2010, 2031, and then 3001. And we'll talk about the differences in a minute. But the question that I brought up to you before we got on here was why we shouldn't play God in this case and control the universe. And most people will go, well, duh. Not everybody. Some people go, hey, it sounds like a good idea. I don't, But what, right from the get-go, right? I mean, that question gives us just the feels here. Right. So before I go into it, when I tell you that, why we should not control the universe, I know things are clicking in your head automatically, right? Like,
well, my first thought is, why would I want to? That's my very first thought. Why would I want to? I mean, it is confusing enough out there as it is. I don't want to be in charge. So that's actually what I think when I hear
right, that. Exactly. And for those who haven't read the book or who haven't read science fiction in terms of machinery, that's the question a lot of science fiction writers ask. It's, do this with caution, right? Mm-hmm. It's okay. Try, make a robot, do whatever you want, but just realize what you're doing. And again, we can get into the whole artificial intelligence in a minute, stuff like that. But basically, this series covers a man by the name of David Bowman and one of his crewmates who are sent off to go find this monolith. Now, for those of you who've seen the movie, it looks like a giant remote control. It's hilarious looking. But basically, what this thing did is this thing started what Arthur C. Clarke would say is evolution. This monolith basically shaped the path from ape to man up into what we're doing now. Now, all of a sudden out of the blue, this monolith shows out of nowhere. And of course, being the people we are, we're like, nope, this isn't right. Let's go touch it and see what happens. So they send these 2 guys off with the help of a little robot who we all know is HAL 9000.
Right.
Now, we've talked about before characters that are not necessarily good or bad, but maybe too smart for their own good. Well, HAL 9000 is that robot. Probably the best character in the thing, maybe, I don't know. But basically, after going a little bit berserk, the main character has to unplug the killer robot and ends up stuck in the middle of space because now he's like, well, I don't have any power to get back home.
Right.
What do I do? So this monolith appears. We go out there. Spoiler alert, he touches the monolith. He disappears. We'll get to that in a second. His buddy who's with him has no idea what just happened here, and that just streams down an entire labyrinth or an entire ladder of things that are about to happen in the next books. Now, from that point on, the entire series follows more and more scientists going into space because they didn't learn the first time, trying to figure out what happened and what went down. And the more they go, the worse things get, to the point where we kind of get a War of the Worlds, where the aliens who made this monolith go, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
You're touching our toys. We're not happy now. And lo and behold, by the last book, things aren't so good for the Earth anymore.
Yeah.
So people are going to go, okay, you're probably over exaggerating. Now, yes, the book is very deep. The book is a little harder to read than most science fiction, but it's supposed to be. I think Arthur C. Clarke was actually a physicist, so he knew, right? And I mean, you're looking at me, right? You knew about it, right? You knew that he was.
Yeah, and I'm not laughing, but I am sort of laughing as you touched on it in the very beginning by saying we'll talk about artificial intelligence. Now, I mean, we are in the midst of another a revolution, really, of technology. Right. I mean, the last time I remember this kind of revolution was when the internet was discovered back in the whenever early 90s, and people were like, "Oh my God, the Earth is falling, the sky is falling," and maybe it did. I mean, maybe it, as we have gone, and I think that's really the thing. We have very little respect for the stuff that we have started to create, and then it creates on its own, because that's what artificial intelligence is. It takes the best of the best.
Now I'll ask you this, because I know in your main job you use it all the time. Is it funny to think that Clarke and Asimov and all these guys basically invented AI way before it even started? Like, what does that make you think to realize that these writers created artificial intelligence and we didn't think about it until what, decades later?
It tells me that that the people who write these books, Arthur C. Clarke and others who write books like it, they're brilliant. They are forward-thinking people that are able to I don't think they're seeing into the future. They're just seeing the possibilities. And for me, that is the future, the possibilities, which is why I don't get scared by artificial intelligence. It's simply another possibility. And so when people are getting scared, oh my God, the sky is falling again, because it's artificial intelligence, it's sort of like we're repeating ourselves. So I love this book. I love this book. I love what it represents.
And I love, I mean, and again, rarely is the person writing actually a legitimate studier of that.
Right.
And Asimov's another one. He's the guy who wrote I, Robot. Both of these guys were legitimately scientists in their own minds. So and when I say scientists, I'm talking like Oppenheimer science. I'm talking like
big time
Einstein.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of science. I'm not talking about that these guys woke up one day and decided to learn physics. Like, these guys knew the ins and outs of robotics, technology, space travel.
And I wish there were more people like them, for people like the rest of people that would listen to that. Because the other thing that makes me crazy is that we somehow think that we on Earth are the only life in the entire, I don't know, universe. Whatever that universe is, the Milky, everything. That we're the only ones, and we're so narcissistic to think that. That there's literally, and that to me is that we're not smart enough to understand that we are just a little speck.
And what's funny is that the entire time, and there's the 3 books out of the 4, which is funny, but the entire time Clarke uses the main character, David Bowman, another spoiler coming up, who becomes the space child and basically becomes pure energy. And the entire time, David Bowman comes back to Earth in forms of electricity and whatever, and tells these guys, hey, stop, be careful. You don't know what I've seen. And again, for those who have seen the movie, he basically is transported to a different universe, but it's our universe. It's basically the future of what Earth is going to be. And the entire time, Arthur C. Clarke has this character come back and go, guys, you're messing with things that you should not touch. I'm the prime, this guy might still have a body or a soul, but he's not human anymore. He's basically pure energy. And because he went ahead and poked the bear, that's what happened to him. You know what I mean? Like,
And I think his message, you got to learn from history. You got to learn from, and we're not going to get into a political conversation because it's not necessary, but I think really what this is the same kind of thing. And that is that we don't learn from history. History is not there to say, is it true?
Right.
History is history. Facts are facts. Things happen, and things have happened since then. And that maybe as a civilization, we should all reread this book, right? It's that we need to learn from history, and we need to know that we are part of a much larger entity.
Right. And I know, we've talked about Star Wars. I've talked about how huge it is. I think, when somebody asks me what's my go-to book, there's two. I have one, Dante's Divine Comedy, which also is kind of an allegory of humanity.
Right.
But my go-to number two is always 2001 Space Odyssey, the series. And I actually listened to it on audio as well. It's a good book. It's long. I'm not telling you guys this is going to be hard to get through, or easy to get through. It's a long book. But you're right. This is definitely a book that I don't think it's required reading. Maybe it should be. I don't know.
It should be.
But I think if somebody wants, because again, I think if you define genres as they are, science fiction is basically using science to create a made-up story.
Right.
There's nothing fake about science fiction other than, the names have been changed. Maybe the creature is different looking.
Right.
Other than that, science fiction is fairly factual. If you've read, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I actually
Star Trek is actually one of the best examples because in Star Trek, the things that happen, those are legitimate machinery. That's stuff that's been built.
Right. Do you remember going to Disneyland years and years and years and years ago? And there was a ride called the Carousel of Progress.
Yes.
I mean, I hear the song, "It's a great, big, beautiful tomb," and they went. The theater moved around in a circle, and you went to different scenes, and it started way back when there was it was a good time. We lived in a very nice time, and then it keeps going, and then all of a sudden there's microwaves, and there are people hover on hoverboards, and all of those things are when you get to the very end of it. And this is what reminds me when I see this and I start reading books like this or rereading or remembering, is that the future is there, and we've already seen it's only the imagination that brought us to that future, and there's more future to come. Right? There's more future to come.
I like that, I think that's why writing or books I love so much, because it may be made up, it may be fictional,
right?
But somebody somewhere woke up that day and said, "Hey, this kind of reminds me of something. I have a story."
Right.
And I think that's why we have so many questions to ask about, and that's what these videos, give us, right?
You think that Hal 9000 from 2001 Space Odyssey, do you think that he did a good job, as being the cautionary guy? Did he do a good job telling us what the dangers are going to be, or we just didn't listen? It didn't matter.
It depends on which version of him. The movie one is really, really demented. The book one, actually, it's the book one, while he does have his little kind of blowing a gasket, literally, it's not as dark as the film one. And I think, if you guys remember the book, the purpose of Hal there was basically to run the ship. He made sure all of the systems worked. Right. He made sure they got back and forth. He ran the food stuff. He ran the beds. Right. So his purpose was really strictly to be the power source of the ship, which is important, right? If you want to fly back and forth, you have to have, the engine, the fuel, the whatever. So at the crux of it, he's just a piece of machinery. Now, the fact that, Clarke gave him a personality is hilarious in my mind. But I think in a way, he did what any good, maybe anti-hero does. He tried his hardest to be nice and just say, "Hey, be careful." But when he realized the humans on board weren't really paying attention, he kind of had to light a fire under their butt,
right,
to prove a point. Now, did he go a little far? Maybe. But I think, in terms of, did he do his job? Yes, at the end of the day, he did. Maybe a little too well. But yes, I think for his purpose, he was meant to keep everybody alive, alive. He
The
just
best.
kind of went a little
Yeah.
power crazy, right? I love him. I mean, I think he's probably one of the best characters. He's not even a person, so that
Right.
tells you something about.
I think it's funny because it also showed things to come. I mean, because
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think there's a single person, no matter what your socioeconomic, even in third world countries, there are computers and there are,
right.
ways to compute. And I don't know if we call our computers a name, but certainly, I mean, my computer's my friend, and I see my computer every single day. I have not named it, but I'm thinking maybe I probably should at this point. Or
I
maybe
don't think you should.
nah.
That's asking for trouble.
So I want to encourage people to go check out the bookstore because you have. Let me put this up here. Oops, do it one more time. There are lots and lots of fantasy books, lots and lots of science fiction books. They can pick up comic books, and of course, you and I are both wearing our T-shirts. They come in all different colors. So go ahead and check that out. Any last thoughts, Rob?
I held myself back. I did fairly well. It's only 16 minutes in. I feel good about myself today. No, I think maybe this will be another one of those things where we expand another video on it too. But I think for the most part, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. At the least, check out the first book. If you don't want to do the entire series, fine. But check out the first book. I think it gives you a very good in depth of what a science fiction book should be, in my opinion.
We
So.
didn't touch on the fact why the last book wasn't published, and I think we're going to.
So, because I was looking through, and so I'll give you a little quick thing about the film. We all know Kubrick was responsible for it. Clarke and him did not really get along. Clarke was very unhappy that Kubrick made a movie, shocker of shockers, right? And Kubrick, he ended up making a sequel, which was filmed, even though the book was not made. But Clarke has made multiple comments saying, my stuff is not here really for your entertainment. My stuff was written
As a cautionary tale.
It's a cautionary tale, right? And the movie is it's a cult classic. I know, I like the movie. It's kind of weird, but I like the movie. But Clarke wrote his books as a writing solely. He wanted to write, and he wanted to make a tale about it. Now, did it end up going all of his way? Not so much. But if you get to the end of his books, 3001, it goes full circle. It's basically 1,000-year timeline between the first one and the last one. And boy, oh boy, do you learn things and see things that you just did not expect coming out of a science fiction person. And it's good. It's all good. But it's very crazy to think that somebody from his age, I think the 60s or 70s, and again, think of the space race, right? It was still kind of doing whatever. I just got to say, you got to pick up this book. He is a legend in his own mind.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, guys, thanks for joining us today. Go check out the store, and we will see you next time on Books, Banter, and Beyond. Goodbye.